Hello, I'm John at the Gun Shop and we're here today to do a review on this, the Webley & Scott 700 series. So, this gun has not been in production for many years, but I have two here today to show you. We'll start with some fairly basic facts about the Webley & Scott 700. It was in fact one of the only guns that was particularly affordable and made in England, of any decent quality anyway. Obviously there's always been some cheap provincial stuff that's had names scratched into it by someone or another, usually not even English to be fair. And certainly one of the most iconic and reliable mass-produced guns ever produced in England. I have two models here. I have a nice flat-filed, slightly heavier version, and I have a more classic, slightly earlier model here as well to show you. So, to have a little look at Webley & Scott, these guns have been around since a very long time. However, the Webley 700 series by Webley & Scott certainly have been around since about 1947. Nowadays Webley & Scott are long gone, although the name is still around with guns made in Turkey and Italy and all over the world actually, really under their banner. But today let's have a little look at something that really harks back to the finer times of English gun making, especially the finest period of Webley & Scott in my opinion. Coming close, let's have a little look at these two. So as I've said, there are many models of Webley & Scott 700, or variants would probably be the better word than models, but these are the two we're looking at today. So the first has a fairly traditional rib looking on it there, small bead sight. The bottom has a flat filed rib with a small silver bead sight. The barrels are fairly unexciting, blued barrels. Moving on to the fore ends, as you can see, and there's a slightly tighter checkering pattern on this gun, as opposed to the wide, more crude looking flat point that's on the earlier gun. The engraving styles do vary ever so slightly if you look at this one versus this one. As you can see on the later gun, the colour hardening has still got some retention there, and they should both be full colour hardened. However, everybody knows this wears off, and at a certain point in wear just looks dirty, so it's not a bad idea, or it is a bad idea, but most people do choose to have it polished off. Again, moving on to the top levers, a blued top lever on both, with a blued safety catch, a blued trigger guard with deep blue double triggers. It's the same on this model here, apart from we have a colour hardened trigger unit instead. Again, both stocks are very similar straight hand stocks, both fitted with ovals. However, the later one is finished in wood, and the earlier has been fitted with a horn butt pad there. A very aftermarket thing. So, they look very much like a gun. They are quite plain in appearance really, though you've got to imagine everything on this was handmade. So as much as you get these fantastic engraving patterns on all these modern guns, this was cut by a man with a thing, a graver, that's not a thing. So what makes these guns great in my opinion? Firstly, their lack of exoticness is actually absolutely fantastic. It is a very classic box lock gun, straight hand stock, standard sort of barrels, although there are obviously semi-pistol grip variants, there's a lot of variants of these. It's a gun, it's a shotgun, and it's a recipe that works. You know, they always say a gun designed by a committee wouldn't be a good gun. This essentially isn't a gun designed by a committee, this is a gun where someone went, well these are all good about a gun, and this is the most popular guns, let's make a gun that shoots. And they do shoot. You know, they come up very well, they swing very well, they balance beautifully. What more could you possibly desire actually out of a gun? Apart from perhaps reliability, and by God they are reliable. A friend of mine once said to me, if you want a gun that it can take a beating and was made in this country, this is your only option. And I kind of have come to believe that is somewhat true. You know, between 1949 and 1979, or 1947 and 1979, about 26,000 of these things were made. And most of those are alive and well today. That's pretty good going by my account, really. And that reliability comes from, again, a lack of exoticness. Southgate ejectors. Standard Anson Dealey box lock action. No dissect strikers. You know, everything is built for reliability, not for finesse. However, it does, because it was made by hand, another fantastic thing. This gun was made by a craftsman. I mean, that excites. If that doesn't excite you, there's something wrong with it, really. by comparison to everything nowadays, which is generally made by CNCs. They didn't have the luxury of that back then. Yes, they had mills and all sorts of things, but this essentially was made by hand, by craftsmen, skilled craftsmen. You know, it's just after the war, a lot of men had come home, and those who hadn't, well, you know, they'd been there all the time in the factory. So there's a certain experience level in this gun that is absolutely delightful. And, you know, everything about it is your typical English side by side. Another great point about it, it's English. Yes, it was made in Birmingham, which to me is essentially, you know, Scotland. This is a beautiful, beautiful gun. Absolutely fantastic, and there's nothing wrong with Birmingham shotguns at all. In fact, a lot of the time you'll find they have the edge and reliability where they weren't forced to be cutting edge or exotic, they were built to last, and these do. Another great point, they're a touch heavy. That weight comes from the slightly wider action than usual, and actually that will help, especially nowadays when shooting ounce and a quarter loads through these things. Ounce and an 1/8 ounce. Nobody really shoots 28 grams anymore, not a game, strangely enough. They're the same pheasants that were around 100 years ago. This thing is a thing of beauty and soaks up the recoil just perfectly. Just perfectly. A standard came with a 14.5-inch stock. That's not bad. You know, it's a little short, obviously, with a straight hand stock, but it's not bad. It's a bit longer than a lot of the provincial guns you'll find with sort of 14 1/4, so you're at a better starting point. So the negative aspects. Firstly, and probably foremostly, is that it doesn't have a removable crosspin in there. So when it comes to rejointing, that really isn't an issue. That really isn't a possibility. This does, however, leave the ability. You have to work on the barrel side of that face. However, with modern TIG welding practices, they didn't have back then, this actually isn't so much of an issue. However, just be aware that actually that cannot help. Secondly, is although that there are blanks available, they are not factory fit parts. So, if something does break, although a blank will be available, it will probably need to be essentially remade. The only beauty of that being is there is a part, so you're not having to pay for something to be manufactured from scratch, as would be if it was a little bit more perhaps of an exotic action. Where there are so many of these around, there is like blanks, and the blanks help in the cost massively. However, built by craftsmen, fixed by craftsmen, that's the unfortunate thing with buying anything hand-built. Bentley repairs are expensive too, apparently. So, all that being said about repairs and this sort of thing, these guns have been around for well over 50 years. And you know what? Most of them, in fact most of the ones I've ever seen, aren't loose on the face. They are strong actions. They don't need all that done. You know, these were a proper forged action block. They're not crap metal. They are really very, very good. And the barrels are very good as well. I missed out the part about the barrels. Handmade barrels, they choke and pattern fantastically. I believe they're dovetail lump. That's a little unexciting thing for you there. It's a little bit rarer perhaps than your standard choppers. Beautiful guns. You know, these things are quintessentially English. If you love England and English stuff, how can you be without one of these in your life? Well, this or similar, but if you're after the quintessential English gun, it's right here. It's right here for no money. You can't say no to it. It's just wonderful. Fantastic game guns. They shoot well, they shoot stylish, and like I've always said, if you're gonna miss, might as well miss his style. And that is one of these. Yes, they are plain Janes to a certain extent, but who cares? They are so beautifully refined in every way. I can't say it more enough. Everyone knows I love them. It's just a shame what more people commit to owning one. Don't be scared by double triggers, that's extra reliability. The rest of it, the good outweighs the bad, and the cost is negligible. I do sincerely hope you've enjoyed this video, and for what it's worth, go and try one. I mean, there's no point me talking about it, I could go into a lot more depth, but there seems very little point. The only way to truly appreciate one of these is to get behind it, pull the trigger.